Richard Ben Cramer, Dole biographer and author of What It Takes.
Richard, the story of polio and the way it shaped Franklin Roosevelt's character is very familiar to most Americans. What's much less familiar is the way the war changed Bob Dole and then shaped his character. Tell us about it.
Well, you know, David, I think you've got to go back even before the war. You have to know what kind of kid Bob Dole was when he went to war. Dole was probably the biggest, smartest, handsomest kid that ever got out of Russell High School. He was a kid who was always working on himself. You know, he wouldn't ever walk anywhere, he'd run. He had the first set of weights in Russell, which was an iron bar with some cement on the ends. And he would lift that thing to build his body.
And he had a plan for his life.
He had a plan. He was always looking ahead, having a plan, working on his case. He was going to, by virtue of his basketball talent, he was going to get himself to KU, where no member of his family had ever thought of going. I mean, that was the East. That was Snob Hill, you know. He's going to play for Fog Allen, the legendary coach there, and then he was going to get himself into medical school.
Right.
He was going to become a doctor, and by that means he would raise himself past any want or uncertainty in his life.
So he goes off to KU. He begins becoming the star. His plan is unfolding. Then he's called off to war.
Right, and the war happens while he's in his first year.
Yeah. Now he goes off to Italy.
Right.
Where he's a platoon leader. He's
Right.
an officer. And one of his first big missions, he hasn't been there long. Franklin Roosevelt has just died.
Well,
War is coming to an end.
Actually, you know, Dole thought he might never get into the
Right.
action. You know, the Allies had already landed at Normandy. They were forcing their way across France toward the Reich. And just, you know, literally a few days before Hitler actually folded, Dole was sent as a replacement platoon leader to Italy. The Italian campaign was a horrible meat grinder.
But take us to that day, now. He was trying to take out some Germans who had a machine gun nest, and he was shot, because I really want to get to the question of what happened thereafter. That's really what formed him.
Right. Well, Dole's mission, as his platoon was given the mission to take a hill, to go down into a valley over a stone fence and take a hill on the opposite side. But a lot of the Americans got hung up in the field. The field had been mined, and there was a machine gun nest ahead and on the left in a farmhouse, a German machine gun nest that was mowing these kids down. So Dole knew his duty. He had to take out that nest. And he and his platoon started for it, basically in a kind of scramble over this stony ground, looking for any hole you could get yourself into. And one of his guys tried to throw a grenade and got killed. Another one threw one, but it fell short. And meanwhile, the machine gun nest had spotted Dole's platoon and turned its guns. And Dole's runner, Sims, got hit. So Dole scrambled out of his hole to go get Sims. And he got him and hauled him back, but Sims was dead. And as Dole was trying to get back into his own hole, get down, get low, he himself got hit. Now, it may have been machine gun bullets, or it may have been a fragment of an exploding shell, but he was basically ripped open his whole right side. I mean, his unit left him for dead on that field.
Yeah. Tell us, the next 39 months he spent trying to recover from that. How did that shape his character?
Well, you know, when you think of this kid who had always not only strived so hard, had a plan for himself, not only that, but he had always measured himself by his physical talent, you know, how he could run, how he could jump, how much he could lift. And by the time he was shipped home from Europe, he was in a full body cast, couldn't move anything, couldn't raise himself to eat, couldn't go to the bathroom, couldn't do anything for himself. And he was basically sent home to die. I mean, all along they thought he would die. But they just hadn't reckoned on his will. I mean, his will was alive. And he first got a little bit of movement in his left arm. And then little by dint of work, he got the rest of his body back, except for the right arm, which was literally shot away.
So an enormous amount of determination. You said there was this reserve that also came down, this dark curtain of reserve. He was ashamed in the beginning of his wound.
He had this enemy, which was his own body.
Right.
He had this problem, which was himself. And at first there was terrible rage. I mean, why him? What the hell had he done so wrong? Even after the rage had passed, there was this unwillingness to drop his own conception of himself. He was going to get back. He was going to work until his body could carry him back to KU and back to play basketball for Fog Allen.
And that's what we have to finish here, I'm afraid, but that's why you called your book The Faith to Endure.
Right. Well, that was actually the words of the doctor who performed the operations on Dole that eventually set him on the path. And the doctor did the operations for free because he said, this young man, he said, he had the courage to endure.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, David.